The story began in a hidden place in Japan. In the darkness, a man could be seen breaking into a vault or gate, desperately trying to destroy the entrance. He sighed and reached into his bag, pulling out a sledgehammer which he used with all his might to break through the barrier. He was very determined, as if desperate to retrieve a valuable item inside. When he finally succeeded in breaking the barrier, he coughed from the debris, thankful that he wasn't hit by any of the falling rocks. He was annoyed, saying that the debris was a hindrance, so he took his inhaler to feel better. He then took out his lamp and entered the place as if looking for something. He was surprised to see a scary statue and examined it closely. He observed it and the other items hidden in the place. As he was busy marveling at the large statue, he seemed to be deep in thought. Suddenly, someone ran towards him calling him sir. It was his lookout, who said that they needed to leave immediately because he thought the guards were coming back. The man was surprised and looked at his watch, not expecting the guards to return so quickly. The lookout thought they had received a tip. He said that they didn't have time and he was getting nervous. They could become international criminals if caught. The man frowned, but then he heard something in his ear and looked back. He saw a sign, and when he touched it, the eyes of the statue lit up. The lookout called him Sir Park and insisted that they needed to leave immediately. But Sir Park didn't even know if they had found what they were looking for yet. Regardless, he continued to examine the statue. He took the hammer and started to chip away at the head of the scary statue, carefully working as he sensed that something valuable was hidden inside. His companion was shocked when he finally managed to break off the head of the statue. Sir Park climbed up the large statue while his companion watched. It seemed like he was looking for something inside and reaching for it. Inside, you could see his hand, and it indeed had something. Mr. Park pulled it out, and his companion was happy because they had finally found it. He placed the item, which looked like a jewelry box, on the ground. When he opened it, a green-colored artifact was revealed. The lookout asked if that was what they were looking for, and he wanted to see it too. They examined it with a magnifying glass, and one of them asked if he could read what was written on it. But Mr. Park was silent, as if in disbelief of what he was seeing. He seemed to recognize the hidden artifact as something valuable and important. In another place, a young man was walking home, rubbing his back and complaining about how tiring his day was. He took out some money from his pocket, thinking that being a construction worker was better than unloading goods from trucks and organizing boxes. But he would rather buy a motorcycle and apply to work for a delivery agency. He entered his home and noticed something strange. He saw light coming from inside and wondered. He was sure he had turned off the lights before leaving. He started looking for his father, realizing that he hadn't seen him in 2 years. However, there was no one in the living room. He continued searching, calling out for his father and asking him to respond. He was curious where his father had gone again. He noticed something on the table, a wrapped item. He knew it was from his father. He wished that if his father had come back, he would have at least shown himself before leaving again. He held the item and remembered his father. That's when it was revealed that his father was the man we saw in the first scene, an antique dealer. His grandfather was known as an archaeologist and a pro-Japanese who betrayed their country, Korea. After Korea gained independence, his grandfather became rich by secretly selling Korean national artifacts. When his father found out, he was ashamed of what his grandfather did and decided to dedicate his life to make amends for his father's betrayal. After his grandfather's death, his father traveled around to recover the cultural assets sold by his grandfather and other assets that were smuggled to other countries. All the items that his father recovered were donated to the country for free. That's why their family lost all their wealth. We see Mr. Park returning home to his family, but it was just to say goodbye again. Even though they lost all their money and properties, and even though his wife died and he got sick, Mr. Park continued his mission because he said there were still many artifacts of their ancestors that needed to be recovered. For a long time, his son didn't understand his father's actions. When he grew up, he asked his father why he chose to live that way. As a result, he became the family's breadwinner when he was just a young boy. Because of that, he had to give up going to college. But for him, those things don't matter anymore. What he wants is for his father to come back so he can be with his family again. Suddenly, the item on the table illuminated, and he was surprised by it. There was a light coming from inside the box. Curiosity piqued, he opened it and was astonished to see what seemed like an important item inside. Upon opening the box, the artifact found earlier by Mr. Park was revealed. He felt like he had seen it before, and as the young man touched it, he was suddenly lifted off the ground. It seemed like there was a message contained within the light. The young man floated, and the light was even visible from outside. But then, just as suddenly, the light disappeared, and the box fell to the floor. The artifact floated, and the young man seemed to be surrounded by an aura, causing him to break out in sweat. But then, someone touched him. It was a woman who embraced him and made him float. He saw a beautiful woman and asked her what was happening. It seemed that the young man had woken up to reality and was surprised to find himself on the floor, as if everything that had happened was just a dream. His head hurt, and he carefully thought about the events that had transpired. He saw the item on the table, opened it, and touched the artifact. Suddenly, he was thrown back as if the artifact carried some kind of strange spirit. But then, a beautiful woman embraced him and seemed to whisper something in his ear. He thought that maybe it was all just a dream, because otherwise, how could he explain what had happened? He scratched his head and saw the artifact on the floor. To his surprise, it looked old even though it seemed brand new just last night. This made him wonder if he had seen it incorrectly. The artifact was called the 8 Bells, a unique item from ancient Korea. But the use of the 8 Bells has remained undetermined to this day. Many believe that the 8 Bells was used by shamans to ward off ghosts and to borrow power from the heavens. Now, he was sure that his father had indeed returned and brought it with him. While washing his face, he wondered why his father had left the 8 Bells behind. While in the bathroom, he received a call. He was surprised to see that it was his boss calling, especially since it was his day off. So, he went to work and looked for his boss. That's when we finally learned that the protagonist's name is Hae-Jin. He was there to ask his boss what he meant by suspending their construction project on the phone. His boss said that it was a bit complicated and invited him to talk in the office, which was a shipping container. Hae-Jin noticed that his boss seemed to have just come back from outside. The owner of the land where the construction site was located had likely just gone out for some fresh air. His boss told him to wait because the landowner was sure to arrive soon. So Hae-Jin agreed. His boss was fixing something on the table, which caught Hae-Jin's attention. His boss said that he wasn't supposed to tell anyone, but he lifted the cover, and Hae-Jin was surprised by what he saw. His boss had found it while preparing the land for parking slots. Hae-Jin asked if it had been reported to the Cultural Heritage Administration, and his boss replied that the landowner didn't seem to have any intention of doing so. Did he think that the landowner would give up on their project just because they found porcelain on the land after spending so much on construction? But his boss said that if the porcelain had any value, it could be sold for a significant amount. His boss then asked if Hae-Jin knew about such things, and he replied that he knew a little. His boss explained that the landowner was looking for someone to appraise the value of the porcelain, which was why he had called Hae-Jin. His boss was curious if the landowner had decided to give him a share of it. Hae-Jin was told that since he discovered the porcelain and needed to keep it a secret, if he did a good job, his boss would make sure he was paid separately for his hard work, and he smiled. So, Hae-Jin held the porcelain and examined it closely, saying that it looked like red porcelain. His boss asked what that was. This is made by applying a dye called cinnabar, glazed and baked, resulting in its red color. Cinnabar is a mineral made of mercury with a red color and a diamond gloss. The boss was curious about how old the porcelain is. Hae-Jin answered that the history of red porcelain varies from the Goryeo and Joseon dynasties. However, can you see the apricot tree? It was used after the 18th century, and this made the boss curious. Hae-Jin smiled and said that if he is correct, and if given to an antique dealer, they could perhaps get 5 or 10 million for it. The boss was shocked at the value he mentioned. Hae-Jin added that they could possibly earn even more if they auctioned it. Just then, the landowner arrived with someone. Boss Kim was asked who was with him. He answered that Hae-Jin is the one he mentioned earlier who works for him. The landowner told Hae-Jin to greet him because he is the landowner. So, Hae-Jin bowed and greeted him. However, the landowner seemed unimpressed and speechless. The landowner and his companion looked down on them as if belittling them. The landowner told Boss Kim good job in bringing that young man here, but he can leave now. Boss Kim was shocked and said they had just finished appraising the porcelain. The landowner dismissed him and shouted that it's not a joke. What will he do with that sniveling child? He then introduced his companion as Sir Kim Cheol, saying, Sir Kim is the president of the famous Heaven Earth Man's appraisal board in Insadong. He approached the items and took a look at them. The red porcelain caught his attention, and he said that they don't need to worry about the Cultural Heritage Administration. However, Hae-Jin was shocked and angry, asking how he thought it was fake when it's clearly genuine. Sir Kim asked Hae-jin where he learned about it, and Hae-jin was stunned by the question. Sir Kim belittled him, saying he heard he was just a construction worker and asked where he went to college. Hae-jin was speechless. Sir Kim added, "What does he know to be commenting like a professional?" Hae-jin was about to answer, but Sir Kim started talking to the landowner, asking if he should even listen to what Hae-jin has to say. Since Sir Kim's father-in-law is a friend of the landowner, he took a day off just to visit and check out the items. What does a construction worker know to be interrupting their conversation? The landowner agreed, and Sir Kim grabbed Hae-jin and shouted, "Get out." Boss Kim was shocked. Sir Kim angrily asked if he's not hearing him. What does a mere worker know about such matters? And he's joining in and annoying them. Hae-jin removed the landowner's hand and replied that he understands, so he will leave. But before that, he took out his cell phone. Sir Kim asked, "What now? Will he check the internet?" He was annoyed and said, "Kids, these days." Hae-jin spoke to the landowner, calling him elder, and said that it's a pity. Hae-jin then said he didn't search the internet. Instead, he checked his bank account. He said he will buy all the pieces of white porcelain on the table for 1 million each. Everyone was shocked by this. Even Hae-jin was sweating because of the decision he made. The protagonist repeated that he would purchase each item for 1 million. Is 10 million enough for all the items? The landowner was surprised and asked if he said 10 million. Suddenly, Hae-jin's boss asked where he would get such a large amount of money. The elderly people behind them were also curious. And when he saw his e-wallet, he was surprised. Because Hae-jin did not go to college and started working right away, he had saved up 15 million. He became obsessed with getting rich. If the landowner accepts the offer, he can deposit it right away. However, he needs to make him a letter of transfer. The landowner was impressed with the protagonist and said, "Okay, fine." He has no reason to refuse such money. The professional appraiser was about to stop him, but the landowner asked why. He shouldn't be hasty with his decision. What's wrong with Hae-jin's question? Didn't he say they were fake? So it's okay if he sells those worthless things for 1 million each. Or maybe he will take back what he said and he's not sure if they're fake or not. Hae-jin teased him and said he is an appraiser who makes a name for himself in Insadong. Sir Kim was sweating. The landowner told Boss Kim to get him paper and a pen, and even he couldn't believe what he was about to decide. They should think about it carefully first. But the landowner told him to stop opposing and just do what he was asked to do. Even the professional appraiser was against it, but they couldn't do anything. The protagonist looked at the porcelain and thought that he was sure it was not fake. He had seen similar ones before, and he had learned a lot from his father since he was a child. So the appraisal and teachings of his father couldn't be wrong. He looked at Sir Kim, who seemed to be sweating. Why would he say they were fake? A skilled antique dealer wouldn't do that. Could it be that he has a hidden agenda? He looked around, so Boss Kim asked what was going on. He asked his boss if they also heard the sound of bells. Huh? He didn't hear anything. Suddenly, the landowner shouted and called Boss Kim, ordering him to bring the ink for the papers. While they were talking, Hae-jin heard the bells again, but he was surprised that it seemed like he was the only one who could hear it. Suddenly, a light enveloped his body, and the woman from the previous episode appeared. She whispered to him to make the appraiser tell the truth, then touched his hand and lifted it. The two seemed to float again, and the beautiful woman chanted an unreadable chant while the protagonist just stood there. A magic circle appeared in front of him and seemed to hold his hand. But everything that was happening was only seen by him. The landowner noticed Hae-jin's hand and got angry because he thought he was pointing at him, calling him a rude little bastard, which shocked the protagonist. He didn't know how it happened, but his hand suddenly moved on its own. He told him to stop staring and give him the money and sign the paper right away, calling Hae-jin an idiot. He said that he understood, so he took out his phone and sent 10 million won to the elder. He showed the transaction details and asked if that was okay, but there was just one question from the protagonist, and the landowner was curious about it. But all Hae-jin said was why? That was actually for Sir Kim. He asked if he lied about the items being fake. Meanwhile, Hae-jin borrowed a box from his boss. The elder was confused and said, "What nonsense is he talking about?" But then the professional appraiser spoke and said that he did that to outsmart and beat the stupid old man. Then he was surrounded by an aura similar to Hae-jin's. The landowner was furious and asked what he was talking about. Does that mean the porcelains were not fake? Fakes? Asked Sir Kim. Is that possible? Hae-jin was busy packing. Just one look and you would know that those were treasures. In the protagonist's mind, he lied to try to steal from the landowner. Sir Kim didn't stop and asked how much the items would be worth. The old man didn't deserve to get those items. But then he suddenly stopped as if he was brought back to reality. The landowner cursed at him because of his revelations and called him a swindler. Meanwhile, the protagonist said his goodbyes. He thanked his boss for the box and took the items he bought. The landowner stopped him while holding the appraiser. He wanted to talk about the deal again, but the protagonist just said his goodbye. And no matter how much the old man pleaded, he didn't look back. He even laughed while walking home. It showed the busy streets of the city, and Hae-jin took a taxi. He thought about what happened earlier. He remembered that a woman held his hand and seemed to guide him in pressing the magic circle. He was sure that it had something to do with him. That's why Sir Kim suddenly told the truth. He didn't understand it, but he was able to make him confess. But that was the magic of the heavenly object left by his father. And what the embracing woman whispered to him was that she had given him that magic. If what that woman said was true, he was sure that it could do more than just make people confess. Well, whatever it is, he would first sort out the items he bought and think about it later. He got off the taxi and looked at the building. He went straight to what is called the best auction house in Korea, the Insadong Dagon auction. He felt nervous about what he was going to do. Aside from trading antiques in Insadong in Korea, there are apparently two ways to acquire real artifacts. The first is through brokers, those who obtain artifacts using any means and methods, whether legal or through theft or smuggling. The wealthy in Korea who are interested in artifacts reportedly hire brokers to find interesting items in their own way. The second way is through auctions. There are only a few auction houses in Korea with verified reputations and records that are visited by the wealthy. This is the first time he has gone to the Daehan auction, as his father used to deal privately. He sighed and went up the stairs with the artifacts. But as he stepped, something felt wrong. There was a hand that supported his back, which surprised the protagonist. When he looked, it was a woman. He thanked her. The woman asked if he was okay, and the protagonist seemed to blush, not knowing what to do or say. He was pale and said he might be better sitting down for a while. The woman left, and Hae-jin had nothing else to say but thank you. He watched her as she went up the stairs. Apparently, he found the woman very beautiful. She might be the most beautiful person he has ever seen in his whole life. But anyway, he noticed that he felt dizzy all of a sudden. He felt cold and something seemed off with his condition. Perhaps this was due to what happened at the site. Is this a reaction to his ability to make others confess? He still couldn't pinpoint it, but it was troublesome for him. Inside, he laid down the porcelains and they were praised. Because of what he brought, he was told he could join the next major auction. The guarantee would be issued in the woman's name. She was Jin Eun-suk, a Daehan auction antique appraiser. She asked the protagonist if he had any other questions, but he said he had none. That was all he wanted to know. Eun-suk was surprised because normally, what people who bring in items want to know is what the starting price would be and the expected bid price. But the protagonist stood up and said that since she confirmed that the artifacts he brought were genuine, he would accept their corresponding value. Eun-suk was pleased with his statement. The protagonist added that he thought he would be asked a lot of questions about where he got the items, but he answered that it was from Daehan auction. If there is something that she, as a Daehan auction appraiser, does not recognize, then it is guaranteed not to be a stolen product. Hae-jin was impressed because she was very confident. As expected from a staff member of Daehan auction, he realized, does she mean that she knows all the white porcelain pieces in the world? Eun-suk thanked him for the transaction. She hoped that he would come back again. She added that they would proceed with the first transaction fee of 8%, and the protagonist agreed. He said he had many more items that he could auction there. The appraiser was delighted and said they were looking forward to it. And since he was there, would he like to visit the exhibition hall on the second floor? She offered to be his guide, but the protagonist declined, saying he could do it himself. He saw that there were many people in the exhibition hall. It had been a while since he had seen so many artifacts like those. His attention was caught when he heard someone being called ignorant in the hall. He was surprised that it was the woman who had helped him when he was entering the building. She was shocked to be called ignorant by the people she was talking to. One of them responded, "What's the point of having a lot of money if you're that ignorant?" She was about to let it go, but what did she mean by her statement? The arrogant woman was Song Yu-rin, the granddaughter of the president of Yuzeong Group, and with her was Jong Dae-hyun, her personal appraiser. She asked if she thought the trash in front of them was worth billions. It wasn't a crime to be stupid, but Yurin couldn't stand ignorant people speaking nonsense in front of her. The woman's ears perked up, and she asked how could she call what she said nonsense? So Yurin asked Department Head Zhang. He approached and pointed out that it was the Jade Buddha from the Ming Dynasty. The color was fine, but there was an imbalance on the left and right, along with the hem of the robe. The edges were also damaged. He valued it at 1 billion. He didn't think it was worth more than that. Did she hear that? Yurin asked. They were being scammed because she didn't have an eye for such things. And she just bowed her head. Hiren added that she couldn't help but be angry when she saw idiots. Heijin approached them and intervened. So Hiren asked who he was. Was he with her? How pathetic, she said. But he denied being connected to her. He knew he wasn't in a position to interfere, but he couldn't stand what he was hearing. Mr. Zhang was angry and said he was arrogant. He didn't even know him. This wasn't the place for him to be careless with his words, Mr. Zhang said. The protagonist responded that he wasn't the arrogant one. He felt something strange all of a sudden. Did the woman activate his power to make others confess again? They looked at him curiously, wondering what was happening because he was just staring at the Buddha. But he recognized that it was different this time. He approached the item and touched the case. Something strange happened to him when he touched it. He was blinded by the light that came out of it and closed his eyes. The sky appeared, and the protagonist was floating in the air. He had been transported to the province of Sichuan during the Ming Dynasty. He looked around and realized that he had unlocked a different ability this time. When Heijin touched the case of the Buddha, it illuminated, and it seemed like his spirit separated from his body. He expected this, but was it astral projection? He couldn't believe he was experiencing the surreal state of astral projection and suddenly floating in the air. But what surprised him the most was the scenery below. The architecture he saw on the streets in front of him could only be seen in records and the imagination of modern times. It was ancient China, several centuries ago. He was surely sent there because of the artifact. Was all of this just his imagination? But then, the woman he always saw appeared again. The woman said that by the way he looked, it was as if he expected it to happen. And Heijin replied, yes, he had been waiting for them to meet face to face. Because he has questions for her. He wanted to know why the magic of the heavenly object was passed on to him. And what does she want in return for the power he now possesses? For example, would she take his life if he fails to fulfill her condition? The woman replied that, of course, she would give him a proposal. But it was something he couldn't refuse. Back at the auction house, they were surprised when Heijin suddenly fell silent. Was he trying not to be embarrassed after shouting there? Hiren laughed and said that after pretending to know something, he just suddenly fell silent. He had just wasted their time. But Hiren expected that to happen. Surprisingly, Heijin spoke up and said he had something to show them. Hiren asked, what exactly is the item? Let's have a story time, Heijin started. The story was about the leading families of China. The Wu family in the Sichuan region during the Ming Dynasty, when there were wars due to foreign invasions. Heijin believed that everything started when his father left the 8 Bells. Now, the woman he sees is the one who wants to talk to him and is asking for his help. And she says that Heijin has no right to refuse her. Heijin excused himself and said that if the woman is asking him to follow, she should at least tell him where they are going. But the woman just kept walking and surprisingly walked through a wall. Heijin was shocked to find that he could do that too. Then, a scene was shown where a son was pleading with his father to let him leave. At that time, Song was a man who loved his family dearly. And because his wife died early, he cherished and protected his only son, Min. But the chivalrous Min wanted to leave and join the war. Eventually, even if his family tried to stop him, he left and went to the battlefield. When he left, his father was seen kneeling and praying for his son's safe return. The two women were just there, watching what was happening to the father and son. One day, a monk visited the Song family to ask for a donation. He said that since the peach tree looked sick, maybe it wasn't hearing his prayers. He added that there was only one seed in the peach, but considering that the tree seemed to be dying from disease, the seed couldn't be planted anymore. When the father asked the monk how he could save his son, the monk replied that there was a precious Hittian jade that could only be found in the high places of the Kunlun Mountains. After making a Buddha statue using the jade, he should place his most precious possession inside it and donate it to the temple. Without hesitation, the father followed the monk's suggestion. The two women were also there in the mountains, and Heijin did not recognize that the person digging in the snow was Song. He thought that he could have ordered his servants to go there and get what he needed. But why did he do it himself in the midst of a snowstorm? The woman replied that it was to save his son. With all his strength, he dug the soil. And because of the determination and perseverance of the father, Song, the jade Buddha statue was made. In the end, Song succeeded in finding the jade. After that, she took the valuable jade rings of her husband and donated them to the temple. According to Hei-jin's story, thanks to his father's good deed, his child Min was able to live and return home safely. He looked at the statue and said it was not just any jade Buddha statue. It was a precious artifact that contained the heart and determination of parents who were concerned about their children. The more valuable an object is, the harder it is to assess its value just by looking at its outward appearance. So, if it were to be sold for $1 billion, it would not be expensive. Hairen loudly asked if he could prove what he was saying. It is possible that he just made up the story. So, he replied that the story was about Juyin, which he found when he read the book World Story Records. There, one can find various types, rare and interesting stories from the early Qing dynasty. But unfortunately, he could not show it because the book is hard to find. Of course, he thought to himself that it was because he made up the alibi about the book being the source of the story. Nevertheless, he said he could show evidence, which surprised Hairen. The jade rings inside the statue will serve as evidence of his story. He was sure that there would be traces of drilling and patching at the back for the rings that were placed inside. It would not be difficult to confirm. Many people had already gotten curious about what he said. One of the listeners confirmed that it was true because it can be seen at the back. The protagonist further mentioned that Hairen's personal appraiser earlier said that the Buddha was out of balance. This was because it was first drilled to place the rings, and then the jade was carved into a Buddha statue. Not looking at it because it was off balance is like laughing at the architect who built the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Of course, Hairen's face was indescribable because she was embarrassed. She just said that even a blind pig can find an acorn, and then said, "Congratulations," while looking at the man she had embarrassed. The appraiser was impressed with him and asked his name. He introduced himself as Park Hei-jin. They then left, and he said he would remember that name and hoped to meet him again. The protagonist looked to the side, and the woman with him said she hoped he would guide the scattered 3 heavenly objects to where they should be. Hei-jin was surprised, but before he could ask again, the woman slowly disappeared. Perhaps what she meant by the 3 heavenly objects were the bronze dagger, mirror, and the 8 bells. The woman approached the protagonist and thanked him for what he did. It was nothing, he said. He just couldn't accept that they were belittling the jade Buddha statue. In his mind, he didn't really have any idea what it was until the magic was cast on him. He was then surprised when the woman suddenly asked if he had eaten yet. Outside, Hairen was furious and told Mr. Zhang if he didn't have anything to say to her. She was embarrassed because of him. When he was working with her grandfather, it was as if he knew everything. So why didn't he know about the book called World Story Records mentioned earlier? He replied that he had never heard of the book. Moreover, there was a book titled New Account of the Tales of the World from the Liu Song era, but he had not heard of the World Story Records or the story about the jade Buddha statue. So, Hairen was shocked and said, "Does that mean the man earlier just made it up? Why did he do that?" Well, he said that in that situation, the authenticity of the mentioned book was meaningless. What was important was that there were indeed traces found at the back of the statue. When the man found it, they lost their initiative. The man they met was smart, so he admitted that he was defeated. But Hairen didn't care whether she lost or not. What was important was the woman named Eun-hai. However, he said that Hairen also made a mistake. Even if they had a personal grudge against each other, she made a scene inside, so many people approached. If that didn't happen, people might have questioned whether the World Story Records book was real. Even if he was an expert, many people are stupid and easily swayed and just believe what they think is right. In the eyes of those who were there earlier, Hairen was the villain who deserved to be taught a lesson. Arguing with her would only worsen the impression on her. And most importantly, her grandfather should not know what happened. Hairen was speechless, because he added that no matter how painful it was for her pride, she had to swallow it first and accept her mistake. Opportunities come to those who can control their emotions. A high-end restaurant is seen where Hei-jin and Onii are dining. She invited him as a way of thanking him for helping her at the auction house. They seem to be finishing their meal when the dessert arrives at their table. Onii asks how he finds the food, to which he replies that it is delicious. Onii is pleased that he enjoyed the meal. She admits that she might come across as rude, but she has a tendency to get to know the kind of people she meets, which helps her understand them better. Therefore, she asks if it's okay for her to ask him a few questions. He responds, "Go ahead," indicating that he doesn't mind. She comments on his knowledge of antiques and inquires about his job. In his mind, Hae-jin contemplates being straightforward with her. But considering what happened earlier, he thinks she is not just being polite. He replies that it might be hard to believe, but he recently worked as a construction worker. She is surprised that a construction worker could possess such extensive knowledge about artifacts. He explains that the person she met earlier is one of the top 3 experts on antiques in Korea, and she is astounded. In his mind, he is confident that he can keep up with the experts. Now that he has gained these abilities, he shouldn't let them overpower his skills. Onii adds that even her grandfather respects the opinion of the expert they were discussing when it comes to antiques. She is surprised that he isn't discouraged at all. This is what intrigues her about him. They exchange glances. Something seems to be brewing. The protagonist didn't expect this, causing him to drop his fork, even drooling a bit. Onii laughs at his reaction and tells him not to be nervous. She clarifies that she isn't asking him out. Hae-jin chuckles and says that he isn't the type to fall in love with someone just based on their looks. "Oh my," Onii replies. Is he saying that she is beautiful? She thanks him. He responds with a cough and then asks if there is something she wants to know about him. She inquires if he has heard of Cien Gallery. He responds affirmatively, asking if it is the gallery in Bukshin. She confirms and hands him her card. She reveals that she manages Cien Gallery after inheriting it from her grandfather. This makes him wonder about her wealth and the fact that she inherited a gallery and became its manager. He admits that being a gallery curator seems like an enviable job. She shares that people often react that way, but from her perspective, it isn't a big deal. She recalls being insulted when someone accused her of getting scammed because she couldn't discern the value of artifacts. She asks if Hae-jin has heard about this. Onii takes a sip of her coffee and says that even if she loses money from being scammed, the issue will eventually be forgotten. But if it happens repeatedly, the rumors about her past mistakes will surely spread. Although she knows it's somewhat rude to ask, she hopes he would accept her offer to become her personal appraiser. Hae-jin is flattered by the offer and considers it as if she has scouted him. Since the request is sudden, he says she should offer the best conditions. However, Hae-jin apologizes and says that he thinks it will be difficult. Onii responds that he hasn't heard her conditions yet and asks why he is declining so quickly. He honestly shares that his dream is to live a chill and relaxed life. But if she needs help, she can contact him anytime as a freelancer. That's the only way he can assist her. Onii feels embarrassed and says that she might have been too arrogant. She didn't expect to be rejected before she could even present her offers and conditions. She mentions that he said he worked in the construction industry. But the protagonist said that he doesn't need to be a worker, and because he's not in a difficult situation where he needs to be tied to a job just to earn money. He's not sure how to say it, but he just wants to have more time for himself. Onii understood this, and then asked if he would listen to her request if she gave him a freelance job. With a smile, she answered yes, and reached out her hand for a handshake. Because it was a request from him, of course she would listen to it. They agreed, and Onii said to let her officially commission him for a project. As for the details of the job, she will contact him tomorrow. After their meeting, because Hae-jin was tired, he booked the nearest hotel and rested there. He looked at the card that Onii gave him and thought about the Cien Gallery. He saw that some antiques sold by his father abroad were on display at Cien Gallery. It's questionable how artifacts traded in China and other places are displayed in a Korean art gallery across the sea. He couldn't directly ask Onii about this, so he had to hold in his curiosity and step back. But who would have thought that the curator of that gallery would suddenly show up in front of him just like that? He looked in the mirror and was surprised that the woman he saw because of the 8 bells was there again. She asked him if he was waiting for their meeting. The protagonist was surprised and even swore and fainted because he didn't expect that encounter. The woman said that he was being overly dramatic. He didn't need to faint like he saw a ghost every time she appears. Why was he relatively relaxed when they met before? If that's going to be his reaction, even she might step back, she said, holding on to the protagonist. He answered that she just suddenly appears without warning. She asked him how he feels compared to last time when it seemed like his energy was drained. The protagonist thought about the word energy. He realized that he wasn't dizzy now, unlike when he was on the stairs. He was curious why she suddenly appeared now, but when he looked behind him, she was gone. Where could she have gone? The woman screamed, and there she was, looking out the window. "Is there something wrong?" the protagonist asked. She asked, "What happened? Why has the sky and earth changed so much?" And she even cried, which surprised Hae-jin. But she said she can feel the energy from the Korean peninsula. That's because the three heavenly objects are not there. She pointed to the flying airplane and asked what that strange thing was. "Why does it divide the sacred sky?" Hae-jin told her to calm down. But she couldn't be calm, and she said she won't be calm. It's impossible that those things are happening. She then chanted, "Be gone. Be gone," while holding some items. Because of that, the protagonist shouted, "It's not what you think it is. Calm down first and listen to him." So the woman stood still. "It's not what you think. Listen to me first, and I will tell you the things that surprised you. So tell me first what you were going to say earlier." But first of all, let her introduce herself. She said she's the soul residing in the 8 bells. After hundreds of years, she woke up again, thanks to Hae-jin. She introduced herself as the shaman of the heavenly altar from ancient Korean peninsula, the altar where they perform ancestral rites for the gods. Hae-jin answered, as expected. But she asked him if he knows what she's talking about. It will make their conversation easier if yes. However, in truth, he didn't understand anything she said. The woman got annoyed and asked if he knows about the 3 heavenly objects, right? He answered, yes. The woman explained that the heavenly altar is where they prayed to the gods for prosperity and development of the entire Korean peninsula. It's the place where they protect the 3 important heavenly objects, the 8 bells, bronze mirror, and bronze sword. And as the shaman protecting the heavenly altar, she was protected by the nations and dynasties after many years. But during her time, there were foreign enemies who invaded their place and killed all the heavenly altar shamans. They stole the 3 heavenly objects. She was one of the shamans who lost their life because of that incident. But when she closed her eyes, her soul resided in the 8 bells. So now, she's there in front of him. She has only one request for him: to find and gather the missing 3 heavenly objects and go to Nirvana. She will give him her abilities until he achieves that mission. So, she didn't finish what she was saying because she was surprised that Hae-jin was crying because of her story. She added, "So, I hope you can help me." Hae-jin was surprised that he wasn't dizzy anymore. The shaman said that if there are mirrors, they can talk without her needing to use energy. After their conversation, the protagonist took a bath. He thought about his answer that he will help the shaman, but it seems like he was carried away by what happened. If the stolen artifacts of their ancestors are also recovered, he thought while brushing his teeth. If his father is still committed to his mission, he thinks they will meet one day. So it seems like it's not a bad proposal. He thought about it and looked at the mirror, and surprisingly, the shaman was still there, watching him. The protagonist blushed and swore because of what happened. The scene shifts to a night on the street where a man was walking. He was carrying an indistinguishable item on his back, and he visited a place. Upon entering, there was a man waiting for him sitting on a couch. The man smiled when he saw him. When the man went out, that's when we found out that he was carrying a painting. He called his boss and said that it has been delivered. So he was told, "Good job." In the other line, the man the guy was talking to earlier was shown. He was in his office, drinking. It was revealed that the painting delivered was by Ma Yuan, a famous Chinese painter. Wait, is that Zhang Daihan, the personal appraiser of Yiren? What secret is he hiding? It's clear that the painting sale earlier was illegal. Does he have a side business? Oh, the next episode is exciting. So, if you're curious about what happens next, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Share this with your friends who like manhwa. Thank you for watching.